I'm just going to start by saying that I'm not a human design expert and I'm not aspiring to be. So if there are experts out there that disagree with me, that's perfectly fine. But according to this thing called human design, I can be categorized bioenergetically as something that they call a reflector type. And I found parts of this definition, this categorization, really useful. So I started just researching about it, and I hardly ever come across reflectors talking about human design or about the reflector type. So I just thought that from my own personal experience, I would share a couple of things that might be useful for people who are few and far in between and who try to understand certain feelings and the way they are looking at life. Because according to human design, reflectors are accounting for something like 1% of the population. Great. And I remember so vividly the first time back in infamous 2019, the year of my massive meltdowns and breakdowns and the inevitable spiritual awakening that follows a spiritual crisis. Like, I wasn't really clued in with any form of mainstream spiritual branches. And it is just that. It is just one way of categorizing. It's just one methodology. So I always say that have a look, see what's out there, and pick and choose what works for you. And for me personally, it never worked to follow one specific paradigm zealously. I tried it with Keylontic science, and so far still that's the foundation for my understanding for what spirituality is and the nature of existence and everything. I base everything on the very base foundations of Keylontic science, but then the way it was presented, that has I have reservations about that. So, such as with anything, I personally haven't gone too deep into human design. But I very specifically remember the first time that I saw this sentence that reflector types would have to choose their environment very, very carefully, because we operate electromagnetically, bioenergetically, as sampling sponges. So no matter what kind of an environment we are in, we kind of reflect that environment. That's where the name of the type is coming from. And we would literally implement and adopt a little bit of that environment, how people are treating each other, what the mood is, what the vibe of the place is, and especially the people are. And we would shape shift and mold according to that. One of the nicest compliments that I've ever gotten from someone is that I behave differently with everyone. And he meant that as a genuine compliment, and I took that as a genuine compliment because that's how I feel like. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time for us to understand who we are separate from our environment. And I think that's why they say this whole wait 28 days for you to be able to make a decision, for you to feel good about your decision. So there is this thing in the reflector type and the 28-day cycle, and it having to do anything with the moon cycle immediately. Even before Keylontic science, I just went, bullshit. I'm not buying into that. What the fuck is that? I'm not gonna wait 28 days for all my big decisions to be made. Bullshit. So, but I do sense and I do recognize the importance for I do, before taking any big decision, before making up my mind about anything, I do feel like I need to remove myself from any kind of influencing environment to be able to feel into my own energies separately from any kind of environmental energies that are going around. And sometimes it takes a couple of days for stuff to just clear out of your system, for an emotional pattern to just stop circulating in your system. It's like a song, fucking Mariah Carey. It's like a song that just goes on in your head for a couple of days and you just cannot really get rid of it, even if you really want to. And then after a couple of days, it's just gone. And try not to remember it again, because it will come back. So it's a little bit like that we need a bit more space and time to be ourselves and to not be in a responsive mode. And usually we feel better, the 1% of the population that can be categorized by seemingly arbitrary categorizations, we feel better about our decisions when we don't feel rushed, or when we don't feel like it was made because of environmental influences. But that's not the main thing that I wanted to highlight and I wanted to focus on. Something that I took an issue with in the description of a reflector type. And funny enough, so human design is based on your birth time, your birth date. I don't want to liken it to astrology because that would probably discredit it immediately, but it's not a personality test that would change with your mood, and it would fluctuate with the moment in time when you've answered those questions. Say for instance, I in 2014 was the first time when I did the Myers-Briggs test, the 16 personality type test, and I came out as INTJ, which again is apparently 2% of the population, and most of them are sociopaths or CEOs. And at the time it really fit my personality. It was quite a scientific, rigid type of person who just wants to observe from the outside and wants to be a little bit more judgmental about everything before interacting with it. Wouldn't really go into situations without having an opinion about that situation first. You're assessing first from the distance, you're analyzing things first, and then you decide whether you want to commit or not. And when you do commit, there's a lot of warmth in there as well, but it's kind of let me have my own mind first and then we can interact with each other. There's a cold iciness from a lot of people's perception in the INTJ personality type. And I say 3 years later, I did the test again and I answered probably the same questions again, and I came up to something like an I think it was first an ENTP. I think that was the first thing that changed. And then 3 years later, now-ish, I'm straight up at an ENFP. 3 letters out of the 4 has changed in like 6 years or something. So unlike a personality test that would change and fluctuate as your personality is changing, human design claims that it taps into a bioenergetic field that would have certain set patterns, fixed patterns. And, your heart produces electromagnetic waves, your brain produces electromagnetic waves, all your muscles are communicating with each other through electricity. So you do have an electromagnetic field, which in the spiritual circles, it's called your aura. But if that's too woo-woo for you, then my favorite word for it is your biofield. And it is a legit thing. It's not something that we make up and we sense and feel and read and see colors in. Some people do, some people don't, but it still exists. So human design claims that it can categorize, I wanted to say sense, it can categorize things in the human biofield based on the time of birth that will follow you through quite rigidly for your entire life. Haven't quite had the chance to test that yet. It might change. What I did notice was that it might be because of the reflector personality types sensitivities, because we are a hypersensitive personality type, yay, is that I used to live with a projector. And once, just by mistake, I think it was this year, just by mistake, maybe I mistyped a number or something. When I looked up, I wanted to look up what this reflector thing is again. So I did my chart again, and it came up to a projector. And I started reading the projector, and I didn't remember the name of it. So I'm like, maybe I'm a projector, whatever. And I'm starting to read it, and it's like cold reading. Just immediately, all of it, I'm just recognizing myself like, that's me. Oh my God, that's me. But I don't see the moon anywhere. Like, it was saying something about the moon that I didn't like. Where is that? And I don't know how I recognized that I wasn't a projector, but then it just clicked in that, oh, of course, the real chart comes up to a reflector. But the fact that in the projector personality type, I recognize so much about myself signals to me that it's not as rigid as they claim. It has a lot to do with you wanting to see yourself in a certain way. But there are still elements of it. And again, I lived with a projector for such a long time that I must have inherited and adopted a bunch of those energetic personality traits, and I can still feel them in myself. That there is a trait that apparently both reflectors and projectors share. And I'm not an expert, so I don't know what their explanation for that is. But my explanation is that they say that both reflectors and projectors are better off if they wait for an invitation, which means when you want to venture into something new, when you want to have a project, when you want to have a business, when you want to set out on a new adventure, creating something, making something, our energetic type is better off if we don't attack the situation directly, if we don't go at it head on, but we sort of step back and wait for an outside force, another person, to invite us into the situation. Now, this can be interpreted in a way that pisses people off because it has nothing to do with being passive, but it also has nothing to do with being incapable of achieving on your own, which they would say that the generator types or the manifestor types are much better at doing, that they just set out to do something and they do it for themselves no matter what. And our personality types are more like, we need someone else to come into our field and instigate that, and then we would be able to ride that wave and go with that invitation. Now, the way I interpret this, and at some point I'm going to talk about the law of attraction and manifestation completely separately because I have a pet peeve with that, is that the invitation is like, I'm going to start differently. What reflectors and projectors are very good at is, in my observation, we don't quite stand on this planet with both of our feet. Like, we're not completely from around here. We're not completely agreeing with this place. We'll always have our heads in a cloud, or, we'll always have something airy-fairy about us. And we work a lot with the underlying energies. So our offering wouldn't be a project offering or a direct agreement or a direct contract or a direct product or a direct service. And funny enough, like every time I did that or every time I tried that, both in my personal life and my professional life, I spectacularly fail at anything that I try to initiate, that I try to offer, in a sense that here is something well made, well prepared, all ready for you on a plate, just fucking take it. And it's met with this very strange, half-hearted enthusiasm that kind of just dwindles down into complete neglect. Like just a lack of response. And it really hurts. Like it really makes me feel like that I'm not able to do my own thing, that I'm not able to create anything, that I'm not able to produce anything in this world. Until I understood that what we do and what we do best is creating an energetic bedrock, creating a fertile soil for open possibilities. We just make the energetic resource pool extremely rich and saturated with the potentiality of what a thing could be. And then we wait for the invitation. Then that readiness is waiting for an invitation. Then somebody comes in and says that I want to work with this. I know exactly what to plant in this pot of land. I know exactly what to use this potentiality for. I see potential. Let me do something with that. And then based on that invitation, our omnidirectional sense of anything is possible all of a sudden focuses on one thing. So it's not really the invitation that we're waiting for, but it's the point of focus. It's the point of view that we are better off if we go with someone else's focal point. And it has nothing to do with the loss of individuality. Once you embrace that there is a huge underlying superpower, that's when you can become quite a spookily precise manifester. And I use the word manifestation very carefully because I categorically disagree with 99% of the spiritual interpretation of what manifestation is on this planet. So it's not in that sense. It's in a sense that we energetically create the possibility for something to happen. And that possibility, that potentiality is filled with many different opportunities, many different outcomes, many ways of how. And then someone comes in with the how, and we're able to take that and just run with it. Once we have a specific focal point to concentrate all that fertile energy around, then whatever we're growing grows super fast and quite successfully. So that was just a huge shift for my own understanding, not to feel quite reluctant to do anything, not to feel quite defeated about having this type that apparently I'm born with and I cannot really change. Once I understood that there is a huge superpower in the skill, the energetic work that we do, then it's a lot easier to embrace the language of waiting for an invitation.